Hi, and welcome everyone to round two of our webinars. In this webinar, we're going to be following up and we're going to be actually talking about designing employee journeys that start before day one and on Tydy.
Hi, and welcome everyone to
how we will
round two
basically
of our
be able to run the whole process from one single interface, manage multiple communication channels and notification channels, and at the same time also really deliver an impactful experience for new hires when they're joining your organization. So I have Gaurabh, who is going to be taking us through the entire demo and through the entire process of building a journey. And so Gaurabh, welcome once again.
Hey, Kiran.
Hey, so I think, what I'm super excited about is to kind of show everyone over here who's joining what Tydy can do from a perspective of engaging and at the same time also, managing the process of onboarding, because it is such a fragmented process. It is such a, I would say, high stress process. When I'm coming in as a new hire, I don't know anyone. I don't know about anything about the processes. I don't know anything about the company. So how can we create that employee journey, which will really help that new hire understand what they need at that particular point in time? And also, how can that journey perhaps be used to manage and orchestrate all the processes internally as well? I think those are the two big things that I would love to kind of see in this quick kind of 30-minute webinar. And so without further ado, again, over to you.
All right, great. So welcome everybody. And yeah, Kiran, so I think that's what we'll cover today. We'll make sure that we show everybody how we bring together all of these different threads that you were talking about into this unified experience so that we can bring everybody together into the process, right? And, just to kind of give everybody some context, what we'll kind of be talking about today is, employee journeys and how they are a better approach to creating experiences, right? Just a little primer on journeys is, at a very base level, what we're trying to do is help any employee get from a starting point where they are to a specific destination. And in today's use case, we're going to be talking about what happens when an employee accepts their offer and then, starts getting productive for an organization beyond day one. So pre-day one to beyond day one, right? And we all know that over a period of the employee cycle, an employee kind of goes through many different journeys. And, in the following webinars, we'll definitely kind of cover how to create various different journeys. But today we'll start with the onboarding journey. And why we kind of focus so much on journeys is to really kind of talk about elevating the experience, right? If we focus on individual moments, like you can see on the left-hand side, it really is about just creating these peaks of experiences, but you always have an average experience otherwise. By creating, journeys, you're making sure that you're guiding people through the process and constantly elevating the experience. And to kind of do that, what we do is make sure that a journey has some key ingredients, right? We want to make sure we're anticipating the needs of our candidates and, to-be employees. We help them accomplish actions. And then eventually we obviously listen to them, get their feedback, and continue to improve the process. And that's how we continue elevating the experience. In today's kind of demo, what we'll kind of discover is, really creating that journey. But at a very high level, what really needs to happen before this process is identifying, the key needs that our organization has for onboarding, defining who is going to be involved, whether it's the manager, the IT teams, the operational teams. And this is what we talk about, bringing together all of the different roles and processes, right? It also means bringing together the different systems. Then moving on to kind of creating these guided nudges. And this is what we'll focus on the most today. The last two bits, step 3 and step 4, which is creating these guided nudges and personalizing and segmenting it, right? And again, a future webinar, we could talk about how we're going to be designing these from the planning perspective, but today we'll focus on step 3 and step 4. So without further ado, I'll kind of just jump into, the experience itself. Many of you already have kind of experienced this, have this access already as customers of Tydy. So you'll be familiar with the screen that I'm showing you. Where I am right now in the product is the journeys tab, essentially, where you can manage all the different journeys that you have. And so what I'll get started off with is how you start creating a journey. So let's call this the pre-boarding journey. So we're going to actually it's the first journey that employee will receive. So we'll kind of call it the welcome to the company journey. Below this, you see there's a couple of different events that this journey can be triggered by: the employee's joining date, a specific date, or whenever we have dynamic criteria that we match with. But for the sake of today, we'll be focusing on the joining date as the trigger point and creating a journey for that, right? Sorry, we already have a journey with that name, so we'll just call it pre-boarding. So let's kind of get started here. So when you kind of land here, what ends up happening is you have this blank screen. What you're going to start doing is beginning to create that timeline for for this employee when they start. So in this example, we'll assume that the person is going to be joining about 30 days before start date. So you can essentially start kind of by creating a stage in the journey where you're kind of selecting that we want to start creating something before the joining date. And how many days do we want to do that before joining date? It is the 30 days mark, right? So we want to make sure that as soon as the offer is accepted, we start engaging with them. So the first thing we'll kind of do is start adding a step to do this. And within our journeys, you can create various types of steps. You can see that you can either kind of start off with a question, you can assign tasks, you can create documents which can be used for sending messages or content about the company. You can also assign forms and request documents through the process. So there's various different things, and as a combination of all of these, you can actually use this to ensure that you are you're basically creating this journey. So let's start off with a simple welcome message for the new hire. We selected the document content step, and we're going to basically create a personalized message. So let's just kind of say, hey, we are glad that you are going to join us on your journey, right? And we can also personalize this for the person. So we can essentially say, if I want to kind of send this out to Kiran in the future, we're glad that you're going to join us on your journey, Kiran. Now, the reason why we use mail merge tags is so that you can personalize this journey at scale. If you're hiring 10, 20, 50, 100 people, you want to make sure that at the end of the experience, they get to see a very personalized view. And you want to make sure that you're addressing each one of your employees individually. And that's the way you can use mail merge tags everywhere in the experience. We'll add a message over here as well, which is a personalized message that goes out to them. What you're doing, it's the first touch point after they've accepted the offer, all right? So you want to kind of just send a quick personal message to help welcome them. Now this looks fairly kind of bland as a message. So let's kind of spruce it up and add some of your branding to it. You can start adding different kind of images to help kind of make this look a lot better. So we're adding a header here, which is very simple. And again, you can do this based on your branding, right? You can do that based on what your company brand is. And there you have it. You have the first content that has been created. And if you go back to the timeline, you'll see that 30 days before joining date, we essentially have a kind of message that goes out. Now, let's do kind of the next thing where maybe we want them to do upload a couple of documents as a part of their compliance process. So if you kind of see what I did there, I basically, again, clicked on plus, went to key documents, just added that module. And what that's going to do is going to essentially request documents at the 30-day mark so that you can continue with your compliance process, right? The other thing that we would like to do immediately after they join is also kind of make sure that we are listening to their feedback about the process that they've gone through before this, right? Which is the recruitment process. So we can go ahead and again, on that 30-day mark, go ahead and add a question, which can be about asking them to rate your interview process, right? Rate your interview process. Please share any feedback that can help us improve it further, right? Now, this is a very critical aspect in the onboarding process. With when we kind of recommend onboarding processes at Tydy, we always make sure that there are points in the journey where you're constantly listening to feedback from the candidates. And this is one of the first touch points. They've already gone through the interview process, they got the offer. We want to make sure that they can essentially rate us. Now, in this case, we are obviously asking them to rate us for this experience, but you could ask various other questions, which are, yes and no questions, just open-ended inputs or multi-choice questions. And we could kind of show you how those things would work in the next few examples. The next thing we'll kind of do is make sure that we are kind of adding some rich content, right? The person's just joining the company. They also have done their research, but what we can do is we can start kind of giving them some additional guidance before they start to build up excitement. And 25 days before, we can start sharing some additional information about the history of the company, right? In this case, let's just kind of say we want to share the company history as a video, right? So our company history. And if you have, a video which might be on YouTube or, offline, you can just you can add it to Tydy. What we'll do here right now is we'll paste the YouTube link, and you'll see that as soon as you paste the YouTube link, that link essentially kind of displays the video over here, right? And our evolution over 50 years, right? So you can kind of just give a caption for the video and save it. If you want to add some text, you can do that too. But this is one of the ways in which you can add some rich media on Tydy directly. Now, what we'll do is, as a part of the onboarding process, we also know that we need to add, start kind of bringing in other people into the experience. So we want the manager to essentially start participating in the process and assign a buddy, so that the buddy can also start coming in and helping, bring this new employee on board and start acclimating them to the culture. So 20 days before, what we'll do is we'll kind of add a task. We'll kind of add a task for the manager, essentially, which says, let's just call it the manager task, assign a buddy for the new team member, right? And below that, you can give a description as to why this is an important process for us, etc. But we'll kind of leave this blank for now, but we can basically do that. What's important about tasks is to always provide some due dates, right? The turnaround time of this whole process is very critical, so that you can ensure that everybody is kind of moving along with the process. And before day one, we're trying to get everybody's kind of tasks aligned, so that the day one experience for the new hire is really great. So let's give the manager about 5 days for this task and assign that, and they will essentially get a notification when that happens, when that timeline kind of comes in. What we'll do here is, you can see that this actually has been assigned to the employee. We can just go ahead here, assign the step to the manager. And I'll dive into this a little bit in detail in the next example as well. So as you can see, we've now just started by creating small kind of guided steps to ensure that every kind of moment of the employee journey before day one is being captured, right? I just want to kind of, Kiran, is there anything that you're curious about in the pre-boarding phase that you think our audience would like to know that I could, elucidate or highlight over here before I move on to the next stage?
Yeah, I think what would be very good is if you could just give some pointers on what types of things work from a content, communication, notification perspective as well, because, you've added some content over here, but are there specific things that, you should add as a best practice, and how does Tydy help make that happen? That would be a great kind of pointer.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So what I'll do to kind of share that is, take everybody to kind of pre-made a journey, because these journeys are fairly long, and I'll kind of walk through a couple of interesting things that we think we should do as we're going down, right? Actually, go back to this one. Sorry. So let's go to a previously made journey, and I'll kind of walk you through a couple of interesting things. So obviously, you can see that a welcome is an important part of the process. The welcome kind of letter is very critical. You want to kind of make sure you make that person feel warm. You also want to help people understand, if you have an onboarding platform like Tydy, what they can expect during that process, right? So always kind of easing that anxiety is super important to make sure they're constantly informed. And you can basically share information about what you can do on Tydy and help them make the most of their onboarding process, right? The other thing we kind of added already were adding some compliance-based tasks, so uploading documents, etc., adding feedback. But an interesting thing, because you are now hand-holding them through their notice period, it really depends on the culture of the company, right? And one of the things that is important is to show how much you care about guiding that employee. So we've kind of started seeing this as a really kind of important step, is also helping somebody, leave their current job, gracefully, right? It's important. They've now accepted your offer, and now they are in some way a candidate of yours, right? How do you kind of help them also leave their job? It might be the first job that they're leaving, right? How do you kind of give them resources to write their resignation letter, etc.? Many companies don't think of this as a moment that is important, but because you're catching them 2 months before they're going to join you, they at least have 2 months or 2 weeks in some countries to ensure that they're leaving their job. So being able to guide them in these small moments are really what matters when you're kind of charting out this employee journey, and that's critical. Then establishing checkpoints are also good, right? So being able to kind of guide them through certain tasks to kind of, you've already told them about how they can gracefully leave their job, they have accepted their offer, to kind of ensure that you are also kind of tracking along with their progress. It's always good to kind of just nudge them and check if they've provided their resignation in yet, right? And once you've kind of provided some of these guided nudges, you can start, talking about the company, give them information about the company. We talked about, how you can share company history. You can talk about, innovative things that you're doing, right? So this is that moment when you're exciting the person who is going to be joining this company. So you want to kind of make sure that you're doing those things too, and really kind of showing them what they can look forward to is critical. And lastly, like we mentioned, really kind of engaging other people in the process. So whether it is the manager who needs to assign a buddy, whether it is the IT team who needs to come in here and assign assets, right? Those kind of cover a set of different things within the onboarding process that lean towards everything from compliance to culture to capability building and helping them understand the company. I will kind of move on to some of the other kind of critical features of Tydy. So as you've kind of created this entire journey, and as you can see, you're actually creating a very step-by-step process. You want to make sure that a couple of things happen, right? I'll start off with what I was talking about, which is involving the different people in the team. So you see on the screen, on the left-hand side, you'll see all of the tasks and documents. But on the right-hand side, you see who these things are assigned to. So while most of the tasks are assigned to the employee or the new hire who's coming in, we do want the manager, IT team, the buddies to start interjecting. So how you do this essentially is by kind of going in here, hitting the edit button, going to configure, and you have a couple of settings related to the step that you can do. By default, we always assign something that is, to the employee, but you can go ahead and assign it to the IT team in this case, because the IT assets and access need to be created for the employee. It could be that in a certain organization, there's a group called the workplace services team who you want to involve. And you could basically have that person, that team, get the notification for this task. You could also have, a specific person who you can reach out to, right? So if you basically have a specific person who you want to assign this to, you can do that too. So, but for now, let's keep this at the role level, and we're assigning this to the workplace services team. Over here, we're also kind of defining who the role is, and by default, it could be that the HR partner is sending this message. So once you've kind of done that, you see that now this task has been changed and assigned to the workplace services team. There's a couple of other interesting things that I want to show you in terms of creating accountability to make sure that people are completing these tasks. You've created this beautiful journey. You want to make sure that people are tracking on it and completing these activities, right? So let's put in a couple of reminders in case the new hires are busy and do need to get a slight kind of nudge to kind of complete certain tasks. So on Tydy, again, going back to that configure modal, you can essentially come in here. You've already set up who the recipient and sender is. You can come into the reminders, and you can start adding a new reminder rule. What you're doing here is essentially creating a rule where if somebody hasn't answered that question within a certain period of time, so let's give this person 3 or 4 days to complete this question, we can essentially automate a reminder that will go out to them. And you can do this by selecting from a bunch of different questions that you have, right? So in this case, let's assume we want just to send a reminder to complete this task that we've assigned. We can select a couple of different templates that we have set up on Tydy. These are emails that will go out to that person in case they haven't completed that. And you can add that to the kind of flow. Now you can basically create a bunch of different rules. You can also go ahead and say, hey, if this person hasn't completed this in 6 days, because maybe they missed the 4-day reminder, you can continue adding more kind of reminders. You can basically go ahead and add a second reminder and use that as a template as well. So you now have 2 kind of automations that you've already created for a 4-day mark and a 6-day mark, where we'll be reminding people in case they haven't completed it, right? What I'll kind of do is I'll show you how escalations work, because that's another kind of aspect where you want to make sure you've sent out reminders, you've sent out various 2 or 3 reminders, but in some cases, that task doesn't get done. So how do you kind of go ahead and do that? So what we'll do is for the manager task where we want them to assign a buddy, let's set up an escalation. The manager kind of does not complete this assign a buddy task within, let's say we've kind of set the deadline for 5 days. So we'll say, let's say if they haven't completed it on 6 days, we will kind of go ahead and create a reminder for the manager, which basically, again, will be a template. Now you can select from multiple different templates, as you can see, but we can basically choose one of these reminders, which will go out to the manager and whoever else we're escalating to, right? So by default, it will go out to the manager, but also we can choose a specific role. We can choose that this goes out to, the HR partner, or it goes out to a specific person again. We want to basically send it out to a person who's responsible for the buddy program. And, the manager who is, supposed to assign this buddy hasn't completed the task. So maybe they can kind of speak to them and tell them the importance of this activity. So again, similar to how we created the reminders, we've now created an escalation for the manager in case they haven't completed that process in the first few days. And of course, we don't want to escalate it just without, sending them a reminder. So let's kind of send them that reminder 5 days before to also make sure that, they are completing that task, without having to kind of face that escalation that we've set up, right? So I'll kind of, I think that covers a bunch of those automations. We have a bunch of more things that are coming in terms of setting up those reminders and escalations for not only having completed those or having those tasks incomplete, but also for various other triggers. The last thing I want to show you in today's demo is really how you segment and target these journeys for specific cohorts of your employees, right? We talked about personalization being a very important part. We do that already as a part of by way of using mail merge tags and other personalization features within the content itself. But for the entire journey, we do want to kind of make sure that we are targeting this for a specific audience, right? So you see over here in the settings, there's a part of the settings called the auto assign criteria, which essentially determines who you're targeting this journey for. So let's assume our organization is a large one, and we want to create a very specific onboarding program for the marketing team and the sales team, and those are the people who will essentially get this. We also maybe say we want to put this for a specific designation, but say in this case, we want to use all designations. And we want to target this to a couple of our offices. It could be a Bangalore office, our New York office, and a Mumbai office who really want to get this, right? So you can see that by creating these segments, what will happen is when a new hire joins in the marketing team, marketing or sales team, and as a part of the Bangalore, New York, or Mumbai office, they are the ones who will get this automatically. With Tydy, these journeys that you create are being automated as soon as the person gets added to Tydy. You don't have to manually assign them. You don't have to individually target them every single time. We're trying to obviously ease the burden for people teams to make sure that they don't have to lift a finger when a new person joins. All of this is happening behind the scenes and being personalized as they have planned it and designed it to ensure that this goes on. So I can definitely kind of keep going on, but I'll stop here because I know we have 3 minutes left. And I'd like to get a few questions in.
I think there are a few questions that have come in. So, I think the first one that's come in is, do I have to create each notification myself, or is there a template that automatically picks the ones I will need?
Yeah, so Tydy will already have some preset templates that we'll have in the library, but you can also create individual notifications.
Okay, got it. And how do we track the responses of the new hire? That's another question from anonymous attendee. So.
Yeah, so there is we'll kind of cover this in one of the future webinars, but we do have a unified profile where you can essentially track the progress of an employee for every single journey that they're doing. So not only within one journey, you can actually see the progress of every single journey that they are part of, and how many tasks they've completed, what content they've read. You can go very granularly into this process.
Got it. And another question again is, do we get any notification if the user is not active on the platform? And, there could be risks of him or her not joining. Is there analytics around that? Because if we're creating these journeys, does Tydy have a way of picking that up and actually, showing it up as an alert?
Yeah, so on Tydy, on the dashboard, you essentially do get a couple of different signals. One of them is when people do not kind of participate in a journey. So let's assume somebody started joining, and they, they started their journey, but they did not kind of complete certain things. You have a couple of those signals kind of surfaced by showing who are the ones who are slipping away. You can set up reminders as well to make sure that if a certain number of people do not essentially complete a part of the journey, you can get a reminder to make sure that you are alerted about that.
Okay. And I think this has been asked in a couple of different ways. So I'm just going to paraphrase this. How long can these journeys be? And is it, a specific time period, or can it just keep going on? How do you kind of build that out?
Yeah, so like I mentioned in the beginning, an employee has different journeys in an organization. So it's critical to obviously time box it so that, you can see that somebody's accomplishing something, right? So what we like to do is break them down into the pre-boarding journey, which is from offer acceptance to day 1, then from day 1 to day 30 potentially. Some onboarding journeys can go on from day 1 to day 60 as well. So it is depending on how much you want to guide and nurture them. But we would definitely kind of time box them to make sure that the process ends and they accomplish something, and we can move them on to the next phase whether it is, becoming a mentor or any of those things.
So ideally, there is no time frame that you're restricted to, but it's a good design thinking process for you to kind of restrict it based on what they need to complete and achieving certain milestones.
Right. It also helps with the insights and tracking, right? Having a time box helps you kind of see how quickly you've done something from an operational process. Yes.
Got it. And I think we're already just on time here. So just the last question maybe that I'll pick up. Okay, this one, how do you create feedback questions, for example, rating the interview process? And is there data that you can see from the responses? Is there, a dashboard to see all of those response data, maybe as analytics, whatever it may be?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. So feedback points happen at various touch points. The good thing about creating journeys is again, from a design thinking point of view, Tydy allows you to kind of create feedback touch points at every stage, right? Like, and I'll give you a couple of them. One of them is obviously, like we talked about, the recruitment process. 10 days before joining, it's always good to see if there's anything that they need. Like, do you need any additional information? On day one, you want to kind of get a quick feedback if to rate the day one. You want to do a 15-day check-in to check if everything has gone well. So you can create these questions along the way rather than waiting for your 30-day feedback survey, which kind of comes in too late, right? So to be a responsive organization, we want to provide that
more
feedback.
Proactive and more responsive. Yeah.
Actually, we have you can see all of that.
Quite a few more questions. So I'm going to try and actually get you to answer these in the next 2 minutes.
Sounds good.
Are there any blockers in case a step in the workflow and the journey is not completed? Maybe gates, can you have certain kind of gates within the journey, and how do you build that out?
Yeah, so that is something that we will be adding. It's on our roadmap to make sure that if certain steps are not completed, you don't see future processes. And again, it will kind of be linked to the escalations. So It's definitely something that is coming within the next few months.
Got it. And what about automated templates? Do we have templates available in Tydy for notifications, for content, things like that?
So again, I mean, today we do not when you come into the platform, but this is something we do have on our Q2 roadmap. You'll have multiple journey templates that you'll be able to choose from and then personalize to your company.
Got it. Today we have notification templates that you can kind of build out, but you're talking about even journey templates, having a full journey template. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty useful for people starting off. One last question, how does games or gamification fit into the journeys world?
So journeys are definitely, gamified by default, right? Like, so each step that you add in the journey essentially has points associated with it. So when a employee or a candidate completes that step, they're always earning points, and on their dashboard they see that as well. And like we've kind of mentioned in the past, is that these points can be used by companies to integrate with your internal rewards and recognition program, or within Tydy itself, we do have badges that people earn as they earn more points, right? So we do have a native gamification layer, but we always recommend having some kind of closer tie to your internal rewards and recognition programs to have more meaning.
Okay, excellent. So I think 4 minutes over, that's not too bad. Good job, Gaurabh, to keep us in time and give us time for, answering some questions as well. I think to, round up the webinar, what we are kind of looking at from a Tydy perspective is to really give you journeys as an opportunity to create experiences, whether it's pre-boarding, onboarding at scale, whether it's for 5 people, 500 people, 5,000 people. What Tydy really enables you to do from a journey manager perspective is create that experience which is personalized to each individual. And that's why I think Gaurabh kind of also very quickly touched upon the whole segmentation and targeting aspect of journeys as well. And I think if there are any further questions around this, we'd be very, very happy to kind of answer them. Just, ping us and email us, call us, whatever it may be. And we'd be more than happy to kind of answer a lot of these questions. But until the next webinar, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Gaurabh, for taking us through the demo.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you,
Cheers.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.